Welcome to What's the Point? I'm Bill Ellis. Each week I talk with people about the moments that shape them, the choices that change them, and what those stories might spark in you. So with that said, let's get into today's conversation. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to What's the Point? This is the show where we explore what shapes us, what quietly directs our choices, and what gives our lives meaning over time. I'm your host, Bill Ellis, and today's conversation is about money, but not the way it's usually discussed. It's about independence, inheritance, and the unseen forces that shape how people live, decide, and relate to risk long after the original circumstances have passed. My guest today is Ron Kmetovicz. Ron has lived through multiple economic and technological eras, built a working life across engineering and business, and spent years thinking about what actually gives people freedom, confidence, and resilience over time. He's also the author of Ghost Money, a book that looks at how our attitudes towards money are formed long before we're conscious of them. In this conversation, we'll explore how early experiences shape our sense of security and risk, why some financial fears linger long after circumstances change, and how people can begin to recognize what is really driving their choices. It's a conversation intended to prompt reflection rather than instruction, one that may make you rethink your own relationship with money and what you've inherited around it, and what truly gives you a sense of freedom. And with that, Ron, welcome. We're delighted to have you here with us today.
Bill, it's my pleasure to be here.
Well, let's start. We talked about reflection rather than biography. When you look back now, what do you think you misunderstood most about money, security, or independence when you were young?
The dependence on myself, the driver that I missed. This is in my 20s. I'm working for an employer. The paycheck is coming in. I wanted more, but I didn't quite know how to reach out and get it. And the realization finally set in. If I want to do more, if I want to engage in more activity in business and more activity in my personal life, the only guy that was going to make that happen was me. It wasn't going to happen for me. Once I realized that my perspective on work changed, my perspective on investing changed, my perspective on family changed, and I took personal responsibility for my life. It happened early in my 20s. And then that shaped a lot of things from thereafter.
So what is it exactly, Ron, that you absorbed early on about work and security and self-reliance?
Well, that came, Bill, from my grandpa and my dad. They were two influential figures in my life, and my mom in a slightly different way too, okay, because she was the custodian of my father's, okay, who was not that business astute. So, but I grew up. I don't want to go back too far, but I grew up in a rural setting, a farm boy in Pennsylvania, northeastern Pennsylvania. The environment there was entrepreneurial. I didn't know it at the time, but the farm had multiple activities going on. Okay, we had the usual farming and the seasonal aspects of it. We had chickens and eggs. Uh, there was a section of the land set out for logging. My grandpa, we harvested 5%, and we were on a 20-year cycle. So every year we took out 5% of the trees, and there was a continuous cycle of regrowth and refurbishment there. We had sand and gravel, and my grandpa was in construction. So he was building homes, building commercial sites for others. So life went well for him through the Depression. He had 8 children. The Depression happened. But from the stories that I was told, it didn't really affect them that much. And my dad, on the other hand, was in World War II in the Air Force and got training in piloting and aircraft maintenance and also electronics. And for some reason, he got out of the service and decided to go into television and radio. He started Gene's TV repair service, TV repair sales and service to the community in the late 40s. We lived in an area that was mountainous, and the stations were in Philadelphia and New York City. Okay, and we couldn't get the signal. So my dad got into the cable TV business to sell televisions. Okay, we put antennas on top of mountains and piped the signal down in a primitive way in those days. And then that expanded. So that was a really technical type of thing. And as an only child, I just grew up with this flair for innovation, for multiplicity of approaches in business. I went to college and became an engineer.
So it sounds like, looking back and me hearing it from an outsider perspective, it sounds like you were very much in the midst of an entrepreneurial setting. And like you said, you may not have realized it at the time, but the farm was certainly an ongoing business and doing different things to make what you could from the land. And then your father, interesting that he left the military and became a businessman, an entrepreneur, and then had to decide how to basically initiate what we think of today as cable by using for the purpose of selling televisions. So all in all, you did have a great surrounding of entrepreneurialism. You might have already touched on this answer. It seems like you might have, but who were the people early in your life that were kind of quietly shaped what you think about a good life? And do they talk about the good life directly, or did they just show it?
No, nobody talked about it. I think I was in an environment of relatively successful people. Okay, I know of no failures within the family structure. We had a few misfits, but even they, after a few decades of stumbling around, literally primarily from alcohol, they came to their senses, okay, and found a groove. But it was there, okay, and you assimilate things like that. You don't have to know why it's going on.
No.
And it's one of those, I can go into a situation today, just sort of scan the environment and see what the people are doing, and I can detect if the business presence or the technical presence to succeed, okay, in some of these groups is there. You can see it, okay, you can see it in the people. So there was no outward display of success. If somebody was having a hard time, someone else would step in and lend a hand. It was a good cooperative environment. And I'll add to that too. When I left college, I worked in aerospace for 3 years at a firm in Phoenix, Arizona. It was a side-looking radar firm. I learned a lot there. But what was missing was the cooperative spirit between the people. Okay, there could have been a lot more synergy, a lot more happening if there was more cooperation. And I think it was the government environment that did that. There were contracts, and there were thises and thatses, itses, and people monitoring the structure of work, okay, right down to the last eyelash on the eyebrow, or hair on the eyebrow. But I didn't like it. Okay, after a couple of years there, I had to move on, and I went into a more productive, collaborative work environment in Hewlett-Packard Laboratories, and that was wide open.
Now that also is clearly corporate. So what you're talking about is government versus corporate, but still you're talking about structure much more so than an entrepreneurial type community feel. In that whole situation, how much of that did you feel that you were chasing money? Was money still something abstract to you? When did the thought of actually money start to feel real to you?
Okay. This is a sensation that I share with a lot of former people that worked in tech in the 70s and 80s. I came from relatively impoverished environment of tools and resources and knowledge. I go to Palo Alto, California. I go into the laboratory that's there, and it was unbelievable. We had so much equipment to do what we needed to do. I was surrounded with top-notch engineers from top schools all over the country, okay, working there. If you had a question, okay, you could find the answer. It was there. These people were really, really helpful and really, really smart. And everything about it, okay, was there to breed success. So I loved it. I didn't feel I was in a place to make money. I was in a place to explore my greatest desires to create things. And they paid well. So that was fine. But I never really thought about it in that sense. The other aspect of it is that this happened in the mid to late 70s with the people I'm working with. You know, we had computers, okay, before the PC, okay. We had really good computers. And a couple of us got together and we said, hey, let's do some fundamental analysis on stocks. We had access to data on companies at Stanford. Okay, that was usually pretty hard to get at the time, but we had access to that data. Started analyzing companies, started building algorithms, and we were looking at what makes a company successful in the stock market, and we found some things that worked. I'm still using some of the tools we developed in the mid-70s today, okay, on a fundamental analysis basis of a stock that I might buy or not. So it was business came in from an investment perspective early in my life, but it wasn't the driver at that time. It was nice to make an investment to see it go up, but that's not what I was there for.
So would you say the whole financial side was still a little bit abstract to you, or just not as in focus, or not as important? How would you describe that?
Okay, I guess the best way I can describe it for me is and there, there, there's a point for me where enough is enough, and I've always had enough. So I never needed to go past accumulating a sum. That was my lesson in life from growing up. If you have multiple revenue streams and they're all of reasonable quality and you're living within your means, that's the key to financial independence. Because and if one goes bad, so what? Okay, you have your own personal way to reconstruct another one. And meanwhile, the other that you have contributing keep going. So I've never been, am I the guy, oh, no, I want to have $1 million? No, that's never been my purpose. Do I want to have multiple revenue streams so that I can go windsurfing in Hawaii, take a ski vacation for 2 months? Yeah, okay, that I want to do. Okay, but you don't have to have big bucks to do that kind of stuff.
So with financial freedom, it sounds like that it gave you independence both emotionally and in practicality.
I think that's a fair statement. Yeah, because I have seen people that's part of the thing that I work with and talk about in my book, where people get caught up in the game, okay, and certainly the game of trying to keep up with somebody next door or a peer or whatever you see yourself as, where you want the fancy car, the big house, okay. That's never been my purpose in life. My purpose in life was freedom. Okay, so and, and if you go after the material tangibles and you do it with debt, oh my God, are you in trouble? Okay, because you need revenue streams to support the debt, and And if the revenue streams stop, if the cash flow stops, your life goes to hell. And you see that happening in people, and it's a hard thing. And I've always avoided that. So if, my home is paid for, I don't have to worry about that. Most everything that of a material world that I have, it's paid for. So I don't have monthly payments on anything. Okay, except the usual of the property taxes and the utility and all that stuff. But so I don't need a lot of money to keep going, and I never have.
Which is, I think, a foundation to the premise of your book, which we'll get to in a minute. But let me jump back a little bit, back earlier on as you were going through your life in Palo Alto and meeting all those people with that great equipment. You've lived through periods of rapid technological change at the front end of a lot of it, it sounds like, just from where you were working and the resources they had. But being inside of that shift, how did you see it progress? And what was it tangible to you where the technological growth was going?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. The business models that we had, we had access to. Some of the business professors at Stanford, would come in and work with us. And Dave and Bill were Stanford people, so they were their friends. And so we were able to take some of the things we were working on, like when we had that first little primitive internet thing working, you knew then that if you scaled it, it was going to be a big deal. When GPS was going, you knew then that it was going to be a big deal. So we were working the technology and the systems and the business at the same time. So, and in those periods, Hewlett-Packard was right at the forefront of a lot of things. And we were in the labs helping making that happen. So we had business guidance, technological guidance, and access to these groups. So yeah, we knew that change was coming, and it was coming pretty fast.
How did that, if at all, do of money and again, is just laying the groundwork for getting in a few minutes when we talk more about ghost money. How did all of that technological change and all of the potential that you could see affect your thinking? Did it free you to do more things? Did it cause you more concern to be more careful? What was the impact? And along with it, as you did that, and this might get a little bit deeper or heavier, but as you're going through that, around that time in your life, you must have been thinking about your future, and you've already mentioned how important your family was to you, your grandpop, and everything else. Did you have any thoughts about what you were doing and how it might affect your kids, and how in the future, how different the world was going to be when and if you had kids? What were they going to be in the middle of?
The to answer it from a personal perspective, the experience there built confidence, and not in an arrogant sort of way, but I knew with the people that I was working with that I was part of a group, that left alone, we'd be okay. Okay, we were smart enough to figure things out, through thick and thin. So I was confident that my employment and my future employment through life was secure. I didn't worry about it. And that's for a lot of people that's hard to get to, okay? But I had that, and that's a gift to get there, to know you're working with great people and that you're a peer, with great people. I enjoy that to this very day. And the other aspect of it is with my family. This is I talk about, you hear people working 12, 14, 16-hour days, through this whole ride, in the labs. I worked an 8-hour day. it was a different world occupationally, and deadlines got met, schedules got met, products went to market. Okay, the new products flowed, and and nobody was in a state of frenzy or panic. There were occasional times, okay, but it wasn't day after day after day after day.
Mhm.
Yeah, I hear the stories of what goes on now in some of the startup world and all that. I never experienced that. And even when I with the companies that I've started hence, okay, just the 8-hour day is fine with me. Okay. If you
Mhm.
can't do it in 8, you're doing something wrong has always been my attitude.
Yeah, and I understand that, and I hear that from a lot of people, but trying to broaden that thinking, how do you see that relating in reality, people that aren't entrepreneurial in nature, people that are employees, people that don't have the kind of latitude that you had and the freedom and the environment that you had, how do you translate the the idea of working enough to live a good life into the lives of people that, they've got to work 3 jobs. They've got to work 16-hour days because of the way the economy is today. Is there any way you can bridge that reality of yours and the reality of today?
Yes. And it's the axiom of work smarter, not harder type thinking. The the world today, as I see it, with the advent of AI, has given the individual so much more education and training power to adapt to the workforce than ever. Okay.
Yes.
So I see if someone is on the job and they're struggling with too much work or there's not enough pay, my first approach would be is to settle back and acquire some new skills, some new intelligence that can be applied to the new world, and do that through the use of one of many tools that are out there. If AI can't boost your skill set, then you're off to maybe a community college or a trade school or whatever pursuit you want to go. But the 3 job thing, okay, should disappear as your skill sets rise
Mhm.
so that you can increase your value to an employer or to your own personal business. But you have to get smarter. You really do. And the smarter you get, the less you work.
Okay. Do you think that most people underestimate how much timing and the era that they're in shape their possibilities?
I don't know. It's hard to speak for someone else, what they're doing. The flow of your life into your work is in your control. So you take it as best you can. You spot where you're weak. You enhance yourself. And if you're engaged in work you enjoy doing, most people can figure out a path forward that will
Nice.
really benefit their career and advance their position in the workforce. But we're all different.
Well, I think that leads us to a good time to get into specifically the book Ghost Money. You've written that book. You've titled it Ghost Money. What do you mean by the words ghost money?
Okay. So the whole title is Ghost Money, The Pathway to Financial Independence. I the ghost money is two things. It's multiple revenue streams and it's minimal debt. So that's the pathway to financial independence. And when you have multiple revenue streams and minimal debt, that's your ghost money. It just sits there through your life and it's one more flow of cash that supports you through thick and thin and where you're headed. So from and I'm focusing on youth the message I want to get is the paycheck to paycheck environment is one revenue stream. If you take that paycheck to paycheck, one revenue stream, take a piece of it and do some smart things with it, you can get to two revenue streams. Two is a very big number for personal financial stability. Once you learn how to do two, usually going beyond two, you've learned how to grow your revenue streams. You'll figure out the way to get 3, 4, and 5. Okay.
Give me and my listeners, please, Ron, some examples of what those expanded revenue streams might be, because
Well,
it strikes me that it's going to be dependent on how much of that paycheck you can actually pull out to put into a different revenue potential. And if we're just getting by, it gets very tough. So help me understand.
okay. Let's start. I'll use my grandson as an example. Okay, he's 16 years old. Oh, he has one revenue stream at his disposal already. Okay, his mom and dad foot his housing bill. They feed him. Okay, it doesn't cost him anything to grow up. Okay, in his mom and dad's household. So what does he do? Well, he has a part-time job at a bike rental shop in Lake Tahoe. Okay, so he's learning a little bit about business doing that. Okay, and he and his buddies, it's seasonal work at the bike shop. So when winter comes in, they got together and they're doing snow removal for the winter. Thirdly, he has an interest in photography. His group came up with and scouted for places around Lake Tahoe where folks can take their really exotic cars. They photograph them with Tahoe scenery in the background, and they've started a little business doing exotic cars being photoshot around Lake Tahoe. There's actually a market for that. When he came to me with that idea, I said, who the heck's going to pay you, Duncan, to take pictures of their car? And he goes, they're out there. I said, okay, give it a go. All right. And they do. Okay. He's not making bucks on the photography business yet, but his photography skills are better. The multiplicity of his source now is mom and dad provide one source of revenue stream for him, okay, as he's growing up. But the income that he's making from the odd jobs, okay, he's keeping most of it, but he's on the 20% program. 20% of that money is going in to fund his ghost account. By the time he's done with high school, I'm projecting somewhere between $20,000 and $40,000 will be there.
Okay.
Between his contributions through his job and through the compounding that he's getting, and he's invested in a mutual fund that's paying 10%. It's a quality mutual fund that does all the work, and he knows how to do this now. So I would say that what I've described is, for most people, a doable scenario. Whatever income you have, 10 to 20% of it goes into your ghost account, and it becomes your ally through life. And that's revenue stream number 2. And if grandson comes out of high school with this nice chunk of change, continues to fund it, that'll be a nice little thing to have happen to him. If he comes out of high school and doesn't fund it, he's still going to have a nice chunk of change in 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
It's a good deal.
Yeah.
Just running the numbers on it. You know, he'll get a job that'll be, mom and dad's revenue stream will go away, but he'll get a job. Okay, he'll make his own there. So he's on his way.
Okay. So the term ghost money, what got you to choose that term and that approach rather than what might be more traditional, like talking about money mindset and discipline and behavior in what might be more familiar ways?
Okay, the reason I chose the title is it's viewed from as someone else would see you. Okay. Others don't see that you have this revenue stream, okay, running with you through life. They see how you live, but they don't see the money. So that's your ghost money. And that's why I picked the title. And it's what's giving you this freedom to financial independence because it's an insurance cushion. It's an education to learn how to keep it going, to know how to make it happen. But at the same time, it's your ghost. You're in control, but it's not seen by others. Okay.
Yeah. What do you think most people misunderstand about their own relationship with money?
The the ability to live within one's means, I think, is the biggest difficulty that folks experience today. There's so much pressure from the advertisers to buy this, buy that, do this, do that. If you go down that route, you pile on debt, you buy non-appreciating assets, you work yourself into a downward spiral of working to service debt instead of working to service yourself and your financial freedom. It's a personal choice. I'm trying to get the word out to people. You don't have to do that. You don't have to have the newest cell phone. You don't have to live in the biggest house. You don't have to buy the most expensive new car on credit, okay, that you pay off in 7 years. Okay, it just doesn't make sense to me. So you get the discipline through funding this ghost account. Some of the other things fall into place that you'll look at how much you have and you'll live accordingly. And when you start making a little more, well, you live a little differently, but within your means, with discipline.
So it sounds to me like a lot of the spending that you just referenced is done for self-identification, if you will. It's like I need these things to feel good about myself. I need these things to be on par with my neighbor or on par with what's going on in the world. And if I don't have that, I'm less than or I'm falling behind. Is the mindset as much as anything?
Oh, I think you're spot on there, Bill. I mean, we've got Super Bowl Sunday coming up. And the talk of the town is the ads that are going to be on Super Bowl Sunday. Well, you know what that's all about. That's to get the football fan, okay, to go out and buy stuff. Oh, okay. And if you fall into that trap and you spend money on that stuff that is advertised, okay, you're likely going to have extreme difficulty becoming financially independent if you can't see beyond that. I wouldn't say that you're totally doomed, but you're headed in the direction of doom. Yeah. On the other hand, staying away on Super Bowl Sunday, in my case, I'm hoping we get some snow by next weekend because it's a great day to be skiing.
Well, I'd be happy to send you some of the snow we have here, but it's pretty frozen in fact and hard pin right now. So just to maybe formalize what you just said, can you offer listeners maybe just three simple things that they can and should or could think about and incorporate into their financial world?
Okay. And this is out of the book. Okay. Three things. Okay. I normally work with five, but I'll convert it down to two. Okay. Get a job that you enjoy doing. Take 20% of what you make from that job and deposit it in a ghost account. Be patient. Keep the consistency of making the investments as your personal revenue stream from your work grows. So you're looking at a ghost account that you contribute to monthly, that you leave alone for maybe a decade or two. That's the 3 steps.
Okay. And the third one is the hardest one.
Yeah, leave it alone.
It takes quite a bit of discipline to do that. And frankly, it takes a reasonable amount of good fortune too, that, something doesn't come up unexpected that's going to eat that up quickly.
Well, no, that's one of the things that's really nice, to have one of these ghost accounts present in your life, because yeah, misfortune does happen. And like, back to my grandson, okay, let's use the number 40,000 that he comes out of high school with, and he's basically leaving it alone. But down the road, okay, he gets stuck. Okay, his car engine, okay, has a screwball job. Okay, and he can't make his monthly contribution to his ghost account, and he needs $3,000, okay, to get the car back on track. Okay, he's got it. Okay, if he didn't have that, what's his next approach? Okay, and this is where a lot of people go. They don't have a cash reserve to sustain through calamities in life. So you're off trying to get a loan. You put it on a credit card. So a $3,000 repair job costs you 4 or 5. Okay, if you're paying 20% interest on the credit card, it snowballs in a negative direction. Whereas just stashing away monthly, a little bit at a time, okay, building up an account that you can access, yes, if you have to, okay, but preferably not, okay, but it's there, okay, and you certainly wouldn't access your ghost account to pay for a vacation. Oh, that wouldn't be the thing for it. That would be misuse of good personal money.
And that's where discipline comes in.
That's where the discipline comes in, yes.
That's where, when we are inundated with commercials and or peer activity and or the newest opportunity, we have to ask ourselves, we have to resist the urge, I feel, to dip into that ghost money, as you call it, for a short-term bump, and consider it long-term still. Along with your approach to money and the ghost money and the 20% saving, you're also you're a great example of, and you also, at least through your practice, if not through your words, you preach staying independent and having a good physical life, good physical independence. A second ago, you talked about you hope it snows on Super Bowl Sunday because it's a great day to go skiing. You're very active physically still, and neither one of us are in our 20s anymore. But you stayed physically active well into what I'll call later life. What does that matter to you? Tell us a little bit of what you do, and then why you do it and what the benefit of that is.
I talk to people about this, but it's one of the things that I believe in life, is to live where you play, because life is not all work. Okay, you want to get out and enjoy some of the things that the world offers us. And it's different, but I'm an athletic kind of guy. So yeah, I like to ski. My skiing is not high speed downhill anymore. Okay, I'm happy with a slow speed shuffle on a groomed run, but I could still do it, and I really enjoy it. I mountain bike, and that's something that has really surprised me, Bill, over the years. Is I have been a mountain biker since the 80s, okay, in a pretty aggressive sense. And my balance when I'm walking is terrible, okay, but when I'm on a bike, it's like I'm a kid. Oh, I don't know how the physiology supports that. And then the technology for mountain biking. I mean, we have big mountains here, and the e-bike has been invented. So yeah, I have a little motor assist to help me get up the hills now, but the downhill experience is the same. Okay,
Yeah.
I just don't have to put in as much effort. Okay, and the technical riding stuff is good. And then you have the hiking and the water sport that we have here in Tahoe. You do it. And one of my, I became aware of this guy uh, about, I'd say, somewhere close to 10 years ago. His name is Dr. Peter Attia. He's a Stanford doc and also a mechanical engineer, so I kind of relate to the guy pretty well from the engineering side and his medical side. But I'm a devout follower of Peter Attia in terms of all of the health-related things that I do, exercise and health. So he's been a guide, and then my local medical team that takes care of me, they're darn good too. So it's a combination of me doing my part and a little bit of help.
Okay. Let's move on a bit. So, staying engaged physically, how has that changed your view on aging or time? And is there any relation or correlation between that perspective and the ghost money, the now as you talk about your grandson, so I'm trying to shift the conversation here to how do you see inheritance, either what you have inherited or what people might inherit from you? And do you see inheritance strictly as monetary, or is there more to and a broader sense of the word inheritance?
Now, that's why the book exists. Okay, I think I mentioned that at the beginning, but last year, this time, we came to the realization that we're not going to be here forever, and we have 3 great grandkids now. That's why I wrote the book. Okay, it was for the legacy. Okay, for the kiddos, so that there's something there that Ron and Gail, my wife, wanted to share that we could just leave behind. So we've done that. We feel good about it, and we consider that a part of their inheritance because us giving them money, okay, it's the proverb, okay, you could teach someone to fish and they'll prosper for life. Okay, you can give them a fish and they'll die of starvation after they eat the fish. So, so we're giving our legacy the tools to be successful, to understand what they need to know to be successful. And I think this is timeless through many, many, many generations, maybe back thousands of years. Okay, with what I've talked about in Ghost Money, it's good sound advice that has stood the test of time. The other aspect of it is, there's going to be a financial legacy that we will leave behind. And we have an estate attorney. We've put together the models and the plans for it. You do that. Estate planning is a big part of getting old. So it's not a pleasant thing to do, however.
Are there ways that you've been able to respond to uncertainty at work through looking back over time, or risk that you recognize by traveling from learning it from generations of your family?
Yeah, the mitigation of risk is living a life that's financially in control. If you have yourself in financial control, you could generally weather any risk storm that presents itself. But it does require major adjustments. But it's not all rosy in our world. The dot-com coming to an end 2000, my consulting business prospered through that decade. The dot-com bust hit. Guess how many phone calls I was getting after that thing for my consulting services? I went from a pretty busy schedule as a consultant, okay, to almost nothing. And that nothing lasted almost 4 years, okay, before the phone started coming back for the kind of advice that I was offering to clients. So what did I do? Well, we had multiple revenue streams. And we cut back, okay, until things started to return. But we had the gift of no debt, Okay, so cutting back just meant a little more with a little less, and we weathered the storm.
Okay.
So if you operate that way, it's good. 20 years later, you look at what happened with COVID. Oh my God. Okay,
Yeah.
that was a shocker too. Okay, so but that one ended quickly. Oh, the adjustments that we personally made through the COVID area were short-lived, but we did make adjustments.
Okay. So it sounds like I was going to ask this as a question, but I'm going to make it as a statement, and you can either agree or disagree.
Okay.
But it sounds like you feel it's more important rather than passing on a sense of financial security, or not a sense of, but actual financial security. It might be better to pass on a sense that life is navigable even when things are uncertain.
I agree completely. And from a financial security, if I look at where people are, at least in the family hierarchy of things, there are certainly members of my family now that are not ready to have money at their disposal. They don't have the toolkit. They don't have the skill set. So they'll grow into that. And and it won't be up to my wife and I to decide how that money gets allocated. It'll be to some of our kids to take care of the grandkids and things like that. But they have the knowledge now of how to make it go. And in our estate plan, and I talk to people about this, some people agree with me, some people disagree. We are not going to leave behind a lump sum of funds to anyone. There will be a revenue stream that heirs will receive from us, but there won't be a lump sum. Lump sum sites we think are dangerous.
And those recipients can work on their resentments when they start to have them.
Where they don't get the lump.
And eventually they'll appreciate it. So you've talked a lot about money and work and independence and inheritance. What do you feel that you now understand about people that maybe you didn't in the past?
Most people are basically good. They're striving to improve their lives as best they can. The one disappointment that I've learned about people is I'm a reasonably good judge of character, but occasionally I misjudge people. Okay. I have been hurt by people many times, blindsided where I never expected it. So I'm really, really cautious about who gets into my inner circle. I've learned some lessons on that.
Yeah.
But by and large, most folks, okay, we do just fine.
So proceed with optimism, but caution.
But caution, yeah. And it's just like when you see an email, okay, it may not be what it appears to be.
Yeah, exactly. Just two more questions for you, and we're right up against the time you committed to. So thank you again for your time and for sharing your insights, Ron. If someone listening feels a little uneasy about their relationship with money or with work for that matter, what do you want them to sit with after listening to this conversation? What do you want them to reflect on?
If you're uneasy about work, try to identify the cause of the unease and correct it, okay? And usually the correction, if it's not an interpersonal problem, okay, there's a lot of times people are dealing with interpersonal issues that are pretty hard to resolve. But if it's a personal skill set issue, go out and train yourself, get the knowledge you need, okay, to overcome the hardship that you're facing. And that's within your control. The other aspects should, given time, be reasonably self-correcting if you just give it time.
So again, we've talked a lot today and it's much appreciated, but as you reflect on not just what we've talked about, but what you've written about and life in general, the final question that every one of my guests is asked, Ron, what's the point?
The point is work hard, play hard, live life to the fullest. To do that, you need a little bit of ghost money.
And to better understand ghost money, you can find that book on Amazon or on Ron's website. All that information is in the show notes. Ron, thank you for your openness and how thoughtful you've been. You've brought a great deal to this conversation, and we very much appreciate it. And to those listening, we hope that today's conversation has given you another way to think about money, inheritance, and the choices that shape our lives and shape your life. Ron, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Bill. Been my pleasure.
Thanks for listening to What's the Point? If this conversation meant something to you, we hope you'll follow the show and share it with someone who might also benefit from it. And if you know a guest with a story worth exploring, send me a message, bill@billellis.com. I'd love to hear from you, and I look forward to seeing you next time.